What the current Attorney General seeks is impunity for all cases.
In a climate of increased hostility, threats of prosecution, and illegal firings and transfers within the Guatemalan Public Prosecutor's Office, exiled former Attorney General Claudia Paz y Paz says current AG Consuelo Porras is in contempt of the Inter-American Court of Human Rights. I'm Roman Gracier, the editor of Faro English. It's Friday, January 17th, and this is Central America in Minutes.
In Nicaragua, the house arrest of Daniel Ortega's brother
relates more to El Salvador and Honduras than to Guatemala. In the case of Guatemala,
they say globalism comes to die at CIPA, but in El Salvador, it's already dead.
Central America in Minutes on El Faro English.
On January 10th, right after we published our last episode, the Biden administration announced that it would extend temporary protected status for almost 1 million people from El Salvador, Venezuela, Sudan, and Ukraine for 18 months. This means that some 232,000 Salvadoran TPS recipients could continue to benefit from these protections from deportation through September 2026. Biden did not extend the designations of Nicaragua or Honduras, which are also set to expire in July 2025. Aaron Reichlin-Melnick of the American Immigration Council said on Blue Sky on the day of the announcement that Nicaragua was at the time being debated at the Department of Homeland Security and White House. Of El Salvador, DHS wrote, quote, "An 18-month TPS extension is warranted because of continued conditions from environmental disasters that resulted in a substantial but temporary disruption of living conditions in the affected areas of El Salvador." El Salvador's extension of TPS is based on geological and weather events, including significant storms and heavy rainfall in 2023 and 2024, that continue to affect areas heavily impacted by the earthquakes in 2001. Those earthquakes were the basis of El Salvador's initial TPS designation on March 9th, 2001, close quote. Veteran immigration reporter Dara Lind, now with the American Immigration Council too, wrote in a blog post that, quote, "The upshot of this is clear. President-elect Donald Trump tried during his first term in office to end TPS protections for several countries, including El Salvador. While his efforts were largely stymied by federal courts, Trump associates have made it clear that they intend to sunset many or all existing TPS protections, which will, once current protections expire, dump hundreds of thousands of people out of legal status and make them deportable," close quote. In a January 2023 feature in El Faro English, Nelson Rauda wrote that the protagonist of the fight for TPS for Salvadorans is the organized diaspora itself. For more, go to elfaro.net/en and read our article, TPS Recipients Fill the Representation Gap Left by U.S. and Salvadoran Governments. With 3 days remaining until the inauguration of Donald Trump in Washington, TPS isn't the only struggle for refuge faced by Nicaraguans in the United States, even for those who have faced the cutting edge of the Ortega and Murillo regime's repression of dissidents. According to a tally by exiled newspaper La Prensa, at least 38 former political prisoners expelled and illegally stripped of their possessions, civil and political rights, and nationality in Managua have had their U.S. asylum claims summarily denied, setting the stage for their possible deportation, whether to Nicaragua or to elsewhere in Central America. As we discussed in episode 12, the Guatemalan administration of Bernardo Arévalo, anticipating Trump's return, told the U.S. press that it is open to receiving regional deportees. The asylum denials are all the more jarring, given that the Biden administration sought to take credit for obtaining the release from prison of over 350 political prisoners and helped to receive them in Washington in February 2023 and Guatemala City in September 2024. In contrast, Spain has offered citizenship to these twin flights of Nicaraguan exiles. One exile, Julio César Dávila Munguia, told La Prensa that in September of last year, a U.S. embassy official in Nicaragua told them at La Modelo prison that they would be sent to Guatemala only to set up their asylum cases in the United States. He told us that it was guaranteed, said Dávila. La Prensa reported that U.S. immigration courts cited inadmissibility, lack of credibility, and discretion as the factors leading to the 38 denials. As El Faro English has reported since the first flight of exiles touched down in Washington in February 2023, former Nicaraguan political prisoners have received scant resettlement help beyond that of their personal and family networks. For many, a new dilemma is thus unfolding, wrote Jose Luis Sanz in 2023. Stay in the United States or travel across an ocean to Europe with the hope of a shorter process. Find more in our article, Political Prisoners Expelled from Nicaragua Land in U.S. Limbo. Hey, before we get to our last segment, I want to invite you to join the El Faro English crowdfunding community. We publish weekly dispatches on current events, in-depth features and interviews, clairvoyant op-eds, and now a weekly podcast in our mission to translate Central America. You can support our work every month for what you paid for that sadly overpriced latte by going to support.elfaro.net. Join our community. Our mantra is simple: journalism must go on. On Tuesday, former Guatemalan Attorney General Claudia told El Faro English that the firing and transfer of most of the staff of the Prosecutor's Office for Human Rights violates both Guatemalan labor law and inter-American directives demanding that the state protect high-stakes impunity cases related to the internal armed conflict. As we reported in Episode 7, current Attorney General Consuelo Porras also dismantled the office's Special War Crimes Unit. This is Paz in an interview with Juliana Ramazzini, published Tuesday.
Weakening a prosecutor's office that took so long to strengthen, and which had the professional capacity to investigate extremely complex cases, is a clear sign of the interest of the public prosecutor's office in ensuring impunity in these cases.
The harassment within the public prosecutor's office has reached such heights, writes Juliana, that those willing to speak on the record with first and last name about the dismantling of high-impact prosecutor units are beyond the country's borders, living in the exile that Porras has fed in leaps and bounds since mid-2021. Paz also noted Guatemala's 3-year inclusion in Chapter 4B by the Inter-American Commission for Human Rights, a designation reserved for states seriously violating human rights, including Nicaragua and Venezuela. Last year, the Commission also discussed including El Salvador, but did not reach a consensus.
There is, without a doubt, a threat to the country's legal system. As long as Consuelo Porras continues to serve as Attorney General, as long as there are judges who contribute to her actions, any person can be a victim of arbitrary persecution.
Last, an update on leading publisher Jose Ruben Zamora. On Monday, the Guatemalan Supreme Court of Justice ruled in favor of an appeal by Zamora to avoid returning to preventive prison prior to his retrial on charges of money laundering. A judge ordered his release to house arrest in October, but an appeals court had sought to send him back to prison despite due process violations. As we noted last week in episode 12, sources had told the journalist collective No Nos Callarán that the court was poised to rule against Zamora's appeal, but his family was not notified, and ultimately the Supreme Court ruled that Zamora may stay under house arrest. On January 11th, 15 international legal observers, including Lawyers Without Borders, called for the High Court to grant Zamora's request. They wrote, "His detention has been deemed arbitrary and a violation of international law by the UN Working Group on Arbitrary Detention." Thanks for tuning in to Central American Minutes today. I wrote this episode with production and original soundtrack by Omnion. Go to our website and subscribe to our newsletter at elfaro.net/en for more dispatches that translate Central America. Hasta pronto.